Delighted to say Republic of Ireland and Stoke City midfielder James McClean is with us this morning. James, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Before we get into the reason we wanted to talk to you, you were playing last night for Stoke against Sheffield Wednesday. How's the actual form going for you at the moment?
Well, that was our first one in 11 last night. It wasn't a game for the purists, but we nearly won. We got a 1 last night, so hopefully now we're still within touching distance of the playoff. It just shows you how mad this league is. We haven't won 11 games, but yet we're only 3 or 4 points from the playoffs. So hopefully now that gives us the kickstart we need. They push on and put a nice run of form together.
How are you playing?
Been all right. I wouldn't say it's been my best season, but look, it's just, I find it difficult without the fans. You know what I mean? It's been bizarre circumstances. So I would say okay.
That was one of the questions that we wanted to ask you. With all the stuff that's going on in the background, how do you actually maintain your form, and how do you separate what's happening online and the messages you're getting, and then just go about doing your job and try and be a professional at the same time? How do you separate those two things?
I think I think now I'm well used to it by now. Once it comes game day, I think that brings it the pressure on itself. Needing to perform and try and get a 1. So I think that takes over. But just on the last night's game, obviously with everything in the media, you're just like, you're just like, I don't want to kind of be seen to be not focusing on the game and taking distraction away from the game. And then you're thinking, is the manager thinking that? And you just kind of, it's little situations that ideally you don't need, but look, it happens, and that's what it is, really.
Is it impacting on your enjoyment of the game at the moment, James, if you're thinking all about these external factors that are at play?
I don't think it helps. Like I said, obviously with the whole pandemic and the way football is now anyway, it's even watching games on TV, it's not enjoyable without the fans. I might get abused after away fans, but at least there's an atmosphere. At least you can. I've always been a player that I thought with the abuse and the booing that maybe without crowds I would probably enjoy it more, but I don't, to be honest. Even your home fans, you thrive off that energy, whether it's good or bad. You react, and that's just not there at the minute. If you do something good, you do something bad. There's just empty silence, and I think that's it's just not enjoyable. But then you've obviously the other factors as well. Like I said, it's not ideal.
This is a really interesting time to be talking about it, James, because as you say there, the lack of crowds over the past 12 months or so, you might have thought that the abuse would be less. You've been in studio before talking about the awful stuff you'd hear from the stands, but it seems to have got worse, if anything, James, the abuse that you've been targeted with.
Yeah, I think now people literally stuck indoors, aren't they? They literally know where to go, and they're probably on social media a lot more than normal. And yeah, it almost seems to become it's just not just me. I don't want this to just be about me. Because there's other players and getting horrendous abuse as well. It just seems to become, once one does it and it gets in the news, it almost becomes like a craze. It becomes popular. For example, it's just a game this morning. I'll read it out now. My brother received a message last night, and this is what it said. I'm sorry what I said about you and your brother and your brother's kids. I don't want them to burn in a house fire. I would much rather James go up in flames on a chair while his kids are tied opposite to him on 2 separate chairs, forced to watch their dirty, stinking, sorry, the spelling's horrendous here, Fenian rebel bastard of a dad burn to the crisp. Maybe that's better dying in a house fire with a smiley face. Now, I'm looking at this, right, and it's actually sent by a kid. And this is a kid writing this, and you're thinking, wow, where's like where's that hate? Like I'm thinking back to me at that age. Like that hate shouldn't be in you at that age. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. It's social media and just in society nowadays. It's a dangerous place.
So you get that first thing this morning, James, is it? So you wake up to that message?
Yeah, I woke up this morning and I was on my brother showed it to me that he got Patrick plays for Glen Torn, and he was sent that, and he got it on social media, his story. So it's just baffling. Like this is a kid. Do you know what I mean? Like this is. So where's he learning that?
Do you know where that kid is from? Is that a kid from the north?
I don't know. It's just he obviously he's got his name and that. I don't want to expose a kid publicly because, like I said, he has a kid. It's different when it comes from an adult. You know what I mean? Like, but it's just madness. Like it's just that. Like I said, that's a kid. That kind of hate shouldn't be in you at that age. He looks about 13, 14.
And do you report that to the police? What happens next?
Well, I think my brother's got it on. He's got it on House Story, so and that's public. So you know, I'm not sure really. Like I said, it's a 13 or 14-year-old kid. Like it's unacceptable, but you know, he is only a kid.
Well, there was obviously the very high-profile incident recently where Ian Wright was abused by a kid down in Kerry, and the judge essentially said that the kid shouldn't have a criminal record, and so he wasn't fully prosecuted in the end. And it kind of feels like actually maybe we do need to start prosecuting these things and holding people to account at whatever age they are, and saying that you can't do this and making a public stand collectively, because unless we all stand collectively against this, then nobody's standing against it.
Yeah. Fair point. You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking, like I hope and pray like none of my kids at that age has that level of hatred among them. But and if it did see something like that, you know, I'd sit them down and I would first and foremost, I would like to know where that hate's come from, and I would do my best to educate them. Like this is unacceptable. You can't be saying these things. Like your words have consequences, and you know you just. I don't know. Maybe these kids just seeing what adults are writing and thinking, well, it's okay they're doing it, or maybe this is an adult writing on a kid's page. Do you know what I mean for him?
I think your first part of that is probably exactly right. So I think that when it became public this week that somebody had talked about burning your house down, and I find it really difficult just even to use those words, that the kid is seeing that and going, oh, I can do a little bit better than that. And is using their whatever horrific creativity they have to outdo that. It's a competition in their heads to. Yeah,
it's almost like everybody, right? I think, especially nowadays, everybody wants to be famous. Everybody wants to have attention. Like everyone craves attention, and you know. The lad that said about burning my house on fire, he got a bit of attention for it. And now other people are thinking like, oh, maybe that's the way to get attention. Maybe it's the way to get my name out there, right or for good or for bad. And it almost becomes a little like competition to show their mates. Like, oh, I got my name I got my name out there. People talking about me now, but they don't have to understand that when that happens, like. Other people are going to jump on them then for the same thing and probably abuse them. Like that's something you don't want. No,
because it just is this circular thing. Can we go back a little bit? I just wanted to ask you a few questions about the timeline on this, and I want to see if it's actually getting worse and what's at the root of that. This story has obviously been a story that you've brought to the fore fairly regularly over the last number of years. Mm-hmm. Obviously. Erin came out and put a post up as well explaining the impact that it was having on your kids. And I don't know if that's the first time that she's gone public like that, but certainly that seems to have been some kind of tipping point in the story getting picked up. Finally, the PFA have come out, the FAI have come out, Stoke have come out and some of your teammates have come out as well and spoken about it. Can I ask you why did Aaron publish that post, and what was it that kind of made you guys go, look, this we need to go back to this and do it again?
Well, I've, like you probably know, like I've highlighted this abuse non-stop over the years. Like I've never had away the abuse, especially the horrific abuse. You know, I share for all to see, and a lot, and I've been quite vocal in the past about not much being done about it. But of course, like this is a daily thing. I don't know. Maybe Aaron, like, I don't know. Aaron done that post until I've seen it myself. Maybe she's just had enough. Like, she's got the stage now where our kids are getting older. They are starting to ask questions, and maybe that was just the final straw for Aaron as well. Maybe she is generally worried that, you know, somebody might actually carry these threats. Take in their hands to carry these threats one day. And look, I want to make this clear. Like, this is not a cry for sympathy. Like, we don't want sympathy. Sympathy is not going to help. I've had a lot of messages recently from ex-players, players that are playing, and just the general public, saying that they're subjected to Irish abuse in the UK on a daily basis, and they don't speak up. For me, this is not just about me, but it's about them as well, if they're listening. Sports stars, people in the public eye, normal people. Like, no longer are we going to stand by and accept the Irish abuse. Like, we're proud. You should be proud to be Irish and not be abused for it. Like, the things like being called a paddy, Fenian, a leprechaun, a pikey, like, it's not acceptable, and we're not going to accept it anymore. And I want those people to stand up and challenge that. Like, we're not inferior, and we shouldn't be treated like we're inferior. And going forward, like I said, it's now like time to stand up and be proud of who you are, and not accept, well, basically being seen as second class.
I think, like, we had Niall Quinn on the show this morning, and we said you were coming up, and he started to talk about his experiences outside after a match playing for Sunderland. He wasn't playing particularly well because he had a knee injury, carrying his daughter in his arms, and a knucklehead walked past him, a meathead he called him, walked past him and spat in his face and told him to feck off back to Ireland. And obviously this has been going on for generations, James, yeah. And like, I think you're absolutely right to raise it. I did kind of want to try and get a sense, has it got worse in the last couple of years? Or is it just the same as it was at the start?
No, I don't think, are you talking about the Irish abuse or just the abuse I get in general?
Well, specifically the anti-Irish sentiment, I do...
No, I don't think that's ever got worse. I think that's always been the same. I think
right.
It's always been deemed to be acceptable, and I think we, not just me, because I've been guilty in the past of not letting things go over my head, but I think we, as Irish people, men or women, we've been guilty ourselves because we've allowed it to happen, and I think now that can't continue no more. Like, we're not going to accept it no more, and I don't care like how many doors I bang on now. Like, I'm going to be heard, and whether people join me in that or not, you know, that's up to them. I understand people don't, you know, for an easy life, don't like speaking out that they receive abuse. They'll accept it, but it's wrong, and we should. And like I say, we shouldn't maybe feel in fear or be ashamed of being Irish. Like, I couldn't be any more proud of being Irish, and I take that everywhere with me, and you know that won't stop. That'll never stop. And I've had a lot of support recently from publicly from my teammates Stoke and Ireland, and that means a lot. Maybe that is now the tide turning, and maybe they're thinking, you know what, it's not okay, and we are going to take a stand. And if that's the first step on the road to stopping, then you know it's a big step.
David Myler was tweeting. We've David on the show every week. We're big fans of his, and he was tweeting about this incident over the last while. I'm actually lost for words looking at James McClean's Instagram. The amount of death threats and abuse he receives daily is shocking, and yet it's never mentioned anywhere. by any media outlet. When will it stop, and when will these people be held responsible? This isn't acceptable. I'm fully aware. And then there's another one after that. Honestly, I was afraid to get involved. I stood by and watched a friend and teammate get abused time after time and thought to myself, I don't want that aimed towards me and my family. That's the line we've crossed, isn't it, where people are going to come forward now?
Yeah, 100%. I think Myler summed that up perfectly there, especially the second part. You know, people don't want the abuse, and they're, you know, understandably so, do you know what I mean? But you shouldn't made to feel that way and feel guilty like about who you are and be afraid to speak up. And hopefully now people are starting to see that, you know, this is not okay. Like, we're no longer going to accept this. And like I said, hopefully this is the first step on the road to that stopping.
Do you talk about it in the Ireland dressing room? Is it a topic of conversation with your teammates?
No, it's not really. No, I think when we're in the dressing room, like, look, we're focusing on the game. Like, that's the main focus. You know, you don't want any distractions. But like I said, it's something that's obviously been in the public eye. Do you know what I mean? It's not that everyone's fully aware. Do you know what I mean? It's like I said, it's never had with me. It's there and plain to see. So we don't need to have that conversation now. We've had a couple of little kind of conversations over the years, here and there, not as a group, but obviously just when you're just sitting chatting, and you know, they ask the questions, and you know, just have a conversation. But I wouldn't say it's something that, you know, comes up every camping. We get into a big discussion about it. People know how I feel, and you know, that's it.
Was this the first time the PFA have publicly come out and backed you?
No, the PFA did. To be fair, Simon Barker, the PFA, he's actually been very good. After the Barnsley, Huddersfield, Millwall games around December last year, you know, he released a statement. But like, I don't want this to be just like, the support now is great. Like, the authorities are making this clear now. They're making this public, and they're condemning it, and it's great. But I don't want this just to be a one-off thing, because the abuse is a one-off. If the abuse is one-off, but you know, while the abuse continues, this needs to be stopped. And like I said, it's great now, but I don't need it to be a one-off thing if the abuse keeps continuing.
No, on a practical level, it has to be something that the social media companies, that Instagram, that Twitter particularly, and whoever else is coming. So if this starts happening on TikTok, they need to get on it as well. That they actually need to start closing down these accounts and removing privileges and reporting to the authorities and the police who the people who are saying these things are. That's literally the only way I feel that this is going to stop.
No, of course. Like, I was speaking to Sky Sports here, and I was doing an interview with him, and I touched on the point where Anton Ferdinand said it best. I was listening to him on TalkSport, I think it was just last week, and he was saying that people in the public eye, like public figures, like players, pundits, radio presenters, whatever, they're held accountable for their actions. Like, if someone said to them abuse, and they retweet it, even though they haven't said it and they've highlighted it, because they've retweeted it, it's deemed inappropriate, and they'll either be fined, banned, or sacked. And these people are getting their accounts temporarily suspended. Like, if you guys now said something deemed derogative online, you should probably be sacked. And so how is that fair? That you and us are being held accountable and getting punished for what we say, but the abusers aren't. Like, that's baffles me so much.
There's just one other thing that I wanted to ask you. How old are your kids, James?
I've got a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And the 3-year-old, she's autistic, so she's unaware of all of what's going on and all this. And it's sad to say, but in a way, I'm glad because she's not aware of the dangers. She's just a happy kid, and she knows no different.
Your 5 and 7 year old, your 5-year-old's learning to read, your 7-year-old is reading, and I'm sure.
Oh yeah, they're at school, and they're starting the little boys football mad. Like all he knows is Stoke in Ireland, and he asks him what he wants to be, and he wants to be a footballer, and he wants to play for Stoke in Ireland, and you know. So look, I want him to grow up proud. And he wants to be a footballer, and God willing, and he's good enough to make it as a footballer. I don't want him to feel ashamed of who he is and get abused for it. Like if this can stop before then, and not just him, but for any young Irish footballer who have aspirations of playing across the water here in the UK, then the sooner it stop, the better, and they can just play their football freely. It's
very difficult to keep all of the news away from somebody at that age because they are so curious, and they're picking up your phone, they're picking up their mum's phone, and they're flicking through the TV channels, and they're on YouTube, and you can't be there 24 hours a day making sure that...
No, 100% you can't. And look, not naive enough, they think that they're never going to know about this, because they are. At some point we're going to have that conversation with them, and sitting down and talking and tell them about all this. It's just like... It's annoying me because, like, the balaclava post, right? That was ill-judged on my part, and it was supposed to be funny along with the balaclava and the caption, and it's one of those things, you think it's funny at the time, you don't really think about it, and then a few months later thinking, oh, well, maybe I didn't take into consideration the hurt it might cause some people, and I try to remove it, and social media is like nowadays, once people screenshot everything that's out there, and when it's out there, it's out there. But it annoys me because it's kind of almost now give people justifications for their actions. They abuse me, and they say and they just constantly repost the balaclava picture and say, "Oh, well, he brings you on himself." But they don't take the time to see that this balaclava post was 8 years of non-stop abuse. And although it was ill-judged, you ask yourself ask them to put themselves in my shoes and take this kind of abuse day in, day out. At some point, you are going to react, whether rightly or wrongly, you're going to react. You're human. And it annoys me that I've given them some kind of justification. They say, well, you bring it on yourself. And they're ignorant enough to try and educate themselves. Like, people generally think that I sat down with my kids with a balaclava on and started talking to a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old about the troubles. And if people can't see that I'd be stupid enough to actually do that, man, I can't help them people. Like, they're ignorant and they don't want to be educated.
James, you mentioned there that there will come a time when you'll have to explain to your kids the abuse that you do get. Have you thought about that conversation? Like, how do you go about explaining that?
It's really a difficult one, because how do you sit your kids down and tell them that your daddy's like hated so much? Do you know what I mean? So it's not going to be a nice conversation to have, but I'm just going to have to try and be as honest as I can. At the minute, like, the conversation, like I said, the 5 and 7, so hopefully it doesn't have to happen for another couple of years. Like, they're already asking the question of why my daddy gets shouted at during games and booed, and why my name be shouted. And we just tell them, like, well, because daddy's playing against the other team and they don't want daddy's team to win. But that can only get you so far. So when the time comes, it's going to be a tough conversation for me and Aaron, but we're going to have to speak among ourselves and try and find the best way to tell them it.
Your wife said it happens at shopping centres and on the street as well.
Yeah, it does. It happens there as well. And a situation you need to find yourself in. Like, you should be able to just say, right, today we're going to do a bit of shopping with the kids, or go for a bit of food, and not have to be on edge. Like now, it's got to stage now where someone's coming up to me and they're asking for a photo, and you don't know if they're being genuine. Like, you don't know, because I've had people in the past, like, I remember there was a situation when I was at Sunderland and I was on a flight back from Belfast to Newcastle, and on the flight, this guy sat beside me, an English lad, and he was actually saying, look, he's in the army and this and that, and, you know, sat and had a conversation the whole way with him. Seemed a nice bloke. He asked afterwards, can I take a photo in the terminal? He took a photo of him. He wished me all the best. I wished him all the best. And on he went. See him on his Twitter. Like, you know, I had Twitter at the time. On the Twitter, there he has a picture up and said, oh, just got a photo with this scumbag. Told him what I thought, blah, blah, blah. And you're just thinking, like, that didn't happen. And you're just going, like, so then that automatically puts you on the back foot. It's like, now you don't know if someone's actually being genuine when they're coming up to you, and you're almost on your guard all the time. Like, it's just a situation you don't really need to find yourself on, and it should be nobody you love, really.
I've got one last question. What are the cops doing about any of this? What have they done again, just to bring up Niall Quinn earlier on, what happened with him was when he was a player for Sunderland, the cops asked for an appointment and said, look, there's a realistic threat been made against you by Combat 18 in the area, and they offered him protection, he said.
Yeah.
And he turned it down. Like, have you been offered protection?
No, I haven't been offered protection. To be quite honest, I don't think I need protection. Like, I know that you get the threats, but I don't know, maybe it's the mindset, maybe it's like, I get the threats, but I don't ever think they're going to be carried out, whether that's probably the right thinking or not. But when you're sent bullets in the post, and the cops get them, when you're being told you're going to be shot, and the cops receive that as well, and the cops have the letters. You know, the cops, the club report everything, and the cops over the years have had all the information they need, names, whatever, but nothing's ever done. Like, so you can probably see why I won't hold my breath and throw my eggs in one basket in terms of hoping something's done about this in the sense of the police.
The threat that you were going to be shot, that was as far back as 2012, is that right?
Yeah, it was 2012. It was literally the week after the Everton game, which was the first time I didn't wear the poppy. It was a week after we played Fulham on the Sunday TV game, and someone just said, like, oh, they're bringing a gun to the game, and they're going to shoot me. And you know, I don't think, like, obviously don't think that was going to happen, because how you smuggle a gun into the game anyway. But you can picture my mother and my family, and you know, Erin not watching that at home. Like, you know, they're nervous, like, they're a bag of nerves, and they don't have the same thinking as me. Like, I see myself as tough-skinned and resilient, but not everybody else is. Not the rest of my family's not. Like, everyone's different. So it's almost, you almost can't feel guilty in a way that you almost feel then, like, even though it's wrong, like, oh, I'm thinking about guilt. You feel about guilty, like you're putting them through this, even though you've done nothing wrong. And
9 years later, you're still getting death threats.
10 years later, we're still here. We're still getting death threats. So yeah, not much has changed.
Just on the bit you said there about being tough-skinned, James. So you wake up this morning, your brother tells you about the horrific abuse that he's received on social media.
Yeah.
How do you go about your day, and how do you go about your week trying to live in a thick-skinned way? Like, how do you actually do it? Do you have a trigger? Do you have a coping mechanism? How do you manage to live your life ordinarily when this is also going on?
Well, I've got 3 kids. Like, you have to get on with things. Like, it's not like you have to get on things as much as normal. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I'm thick-skinned. Like, like, I can handle what comes my way. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel I can handle whatever comes my way, or that mental or physical, but when it comes to, like, my priority in life is providing and protecting my family. And, you know, when you cross that line, that's a different story. Do you know what I mean? So, no, but for the kids' sake, I have to, me and Aaron, we have to get on life as much as normal for them, and not seem to be affected by this.
I think when the time comes to have the conversation with your kids, you're going to be able to point to a body of work that you've put together which says that you stood up for something, and you stood up for who you are, and you stood up for them, and you stood up for your mates, and you stood up for your people. And I know it's your conversation to have, but certainly that's how I would be leading off if I was you. And you can point to interviews like this, and you can point appearances on Talk Sport and standing up for something, as opposed to you know, a lot of people who haven't.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, look, hopefully when the time comes to have that conversation, you know, all this abuse, not just for me, but all the anti-Irish abuse has stopped. And I think when that day comes, and if that's the case, and young Irish footballers, and hopefully, again, God willing, my son's one of them, and I see that them playing with the freedom of who they are and where they're from, and not being abused for that. I think I'll take. I think that could be up there as one of my proudest moments, and you know, I think that would be definitely something I'd be very, very, very proud of. That I helped in a small way achieve that for them.
One last question. Do you want more of your teammates and your former teammates to come out over the next few days and explain their stories and tell their stories?
Look, I've been quite critical in the past about my teammates not coming out and support me, but, you know, this time I can't because they've been absolutely brilliant. You know, they come out publicly and they've supported me now, and, you know, if they're listening or they see this, like, I've told them individually anyway, but, you know, their support means, like, they've no idea how much their support means, not just to me, but to my family. And not just for me also, but I would like to think they would, you know, now is the opportunity for them and to come out and speak about their own abuse. And the more people speak about it and raise awareness, especially public figures, then it's just not going to help you. It's going to help other people as well. It's going to help normal working class people as well, who in a 9-to-5 job or whatever. Like, when people come out and speak out, then hopefully they take inspiration from that as well, and, you know, we change this once and for all. Yeah,
change comes slow, but it comes when people put their head above the parapet and take risks, and you've certainly done that. James, thanks a million for joining us here on OTB AM this morning.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
It's James McClean there, giving us some insight into what it's actually like. I can only imagine how horrific it is to wake up in the morning and to read that post. That was absolutely chilling. And again, you really hope that something comes of it. I think it's up to politicians and it's up to police to do something meaningful with what the body of evidence there, Owen, is so long. It stretches back so far. And I was trying not to labour the point too much on the cops, but ultimately, these are the types of threats that in previous generations you might not have taken this too seriously, but there have been, like, there was a Labour MP murdered a couple of years ago. There was a TV presenter murdered a decade ago. Like, you know, I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable playing in a football match having been told that I'm going to take a gun to shoot you playing this football match by somebody who was able to make that communication known. I mean, you're banking on, well, okay, so maybe they won't be able to smuggle something in. I'm sure the security is pretty good, and I'm sure it is, but at the same time, you're to go about your job and perform and play well.
I don't know how any person can't possibly be affected by it, either in every single waking minute or in how they're actually carrying out their professional duty, given how long it's gone on. Like, I'm sure there's a point where you become somewhat desensitized to it, but you can't become desensitized to it. You can't become fully desensitized to some of the stuff that him and his family are receiving, and the fact that it's now I guess we didn't actually establish this in the interview, but it seems that it's more of a common occurrence that his family are getting targeted directly over the last little while with their specific accounts or whatever. Like, that is, again, just another bridge too far, despite the fact that the bridge too far has already been crossed 10 years ago. I don't know how the guy deals with it. I don't know what happens next. I can imagine just how exasperated you would be in terms of dealing with social media companies or dealing with the police when you look at the hit rate for this sort of thing and justice being served.
The social media companies, they're the ones who bear the responsibility for being the platform and for platforming this hate speech. And that's the easiest thing in the world to switch off. We've seen you switched off Trump's account and all of a sudden a lot of the air got taken out of that. The same can happen on a micro scale with the racists. Like his brother has that story, I presume it's on Instagram, and so Instagram could easily find that person and ban them, and all of a sudden it becomes harder and harder. The easiest thing for all of this is that you can't have a social media account unless you are identified and identifiable. The same way you can't have a gambling account unless you're identified or identifiable. It's a really easy fix. It's one that they are refusing to do. But we're reaching a point now where we understand that these aren't just forces, benevolent forces designed on making communication easier between the people of the world. They're money-making enterprises who are one of the fastest ways to distribute hate speech. And unless we hold them accountable for that, they're not going to volunteer to look after this stuff. They wouldn't. There's been no signs of them volunteering to look after stuff in the past. It's only when they've been beaten and browbeaten into it. This might seem like a completely tangential thing, but in Australia, Google have just agreed to pay for the media companies for the stories that they distribute on Google News. They will pay if they're being forced to pay. The Australian Parliament forced them into that. They frog-marched them in and said, you need to pay for this. And they were like, no, we don't want to. And then they were like, you're going to pay for this. And then they paid for it. So they could easily, you're going to fix this if the European Union, if the British government decided they wanted to fix this, they could fix it.
The grim prediction here, though, would be that nothing is going to change unless there is a proper competitor in the market who will be able to offer a social media alternative that actually requires identification. And once that thing becomes the popular new thing, then all of a sudden Twitter and Instagram will find their moral compass ticking in the right way and say, you know what, actually having a proper identification for social media was the right thing to do, but actually it'll only be because it'll make lucrative financial sense for them at the moment. The bottom line is it doesn't make sense for them at the moment. It's going to kick many of their users off their platforms, and that ain't going to stick with them. The only reason why Trump got kicked off Twitter was because it had reached a point where it was popular enough to do so, where they felt that the tide was very much at their back, despite all the evidence over the past few years, to finally kick him off Twitter. And they realized there wouldn't be that many repercussions for the social media sites themselves to actually kick him off. And that's why they did it. Hopefully we reach that point soon with football and with abuse, because really that place should have been reached a long, long time ago. And if they hadn't realised at any point over the last 10 years that this is happening, then I don't know why anything new is going to appear on their radar to change their behaviour. You've been listening to an exclusive interview with James McClean here this morning on OTB AM. If you missed anything, you can get it just after 10 o'clock on our podcast or on our YouTube channel or on the OTB Sports app. We're live every weekday morning from 7:30 in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Subscribe to the OTB AM podcast or subscribe to our YouTube channel to get us live every morning. Tomorrow morning, Champions League reaction, more on Ireland's start to the Six Nations, our Cheltenham countdown and much more besides.